You got it. The creation of thought forms. The subject we are now going to deal with cannot be handled too explicitly on account of the attendant dangers. He sometimes talks about attendant planets, you know, the sun, and you can't get rid of these attendants. So when you're dealing with this subject, there are attendant dangers. And, you know, people get a little tired of hearing about dangers, but I suppose there is no choice from DK's point of view, because we're so far from really being able to do this stuff anyway. What's happening? We have trouble? All good? Okay. Anyway, you can read it there or make notes, whatever you want. I'm making notes as I go. You're in green, and then when it's all over, I'll, give it to you if there's additional notes. In the creative process, man is dealing with electrical phenomena of some kind. Now remember, 3 types of electricity. The negative type we know the most about. The positive type of electricity has more to do with the spirit, and a type that's almost totally unknown to us, he tells us, is this equilibrizing, neutralizing, solar fire type of electricity. But it seems to be necessary to bring the poles together. I wouldn't be surprised if we find that Venus is strongly involved with that type of electricity. Probably everyone will have a planetary basis, and Venus has this bipolar attractiveness connected with it. Probably would also have to investigate copper, Venus's metal, to see it's a high conductor. In the Church in the Rock in Helsinki is a magnificent church built into the whole ceiling is copper coils about 60 feet in diameter. It's just, whoever thought about people meditating under that thing must have really, known what they were doing. I just love to go in there. They have magnificent concerts and Church in the Rock. And you will have the technical name for it. Some of you have been there when you've been with us. Well, you haven't come yet, but okay. Okay, are you ready? All right. Maybe the last thing you ever do. All right.
So the copper, is that magnetic?
Copper is a very high conductor. Lynn would know more about it, but it's one of the highest of the conducting metals.
From certain angles, you say these elementals could be very dangerous to human life.
What he's saying the rules themselves and the formulas that release us into the influence of the elementals are dangerous. You can you can drown, you can suffocate, you can fry. He says there's no such thing as death by air right now. But I can conceive of being blown apart. You know what I mean? If you think about all the percussive effects of the explosives, or death by wind, when we have a tornado, that's very much death by air. So you could become just fragmented. Anyway. Explosion, did you say?
Explosion.
Yes, exactly. See, not only what is picked up and thrown at you, but just the shock wave itself. That can be enough. But anyway, he has his various reasons, and he'll try to go into it. Man is dealing with electrical phenomena of some kind, 3 types, and this neutralizing is the type least known. With that which is vitally affected by each thought form emanating from him. So he's dealing with electrical phenomena of some kind with that which is vitally affected by each thought form coming from him, namely, presumably, the army of the voice. And with those lesser lives who aggregated together form, from certain angles of vision, a source of very real danger to men. So I suppose all of these devas, which are unconscious, you might say all unconscious devas to a certain extent. Manipulating devas, elemental lives, those of the lowest kind, elements of fire, earth, air, and water. Elements are considered to be blind and not very organized, and they follow the law of their own being, and they don't necessarily respect our integrity. That your integrity is threatened, and he's going to talk about that. So that
Sorry, all unconscious is, or
they are the ones
unconscious?
unconscious, threatening our integrity. Once they are self-conscious, they seem to have risen to a point almost equal to man, or equal to man, really, and they seem to know their boundaries. But here, we always need restraining mantrams, especially with the elementals, because they always want to rush in whatever form you seem to be embodying, the boundaries of that form can be threatened. They may take away all your astral material, they may burn you in the ethers, they may suffocate you, so you cannot breathe. He tells us that many... Well, I guess we're going to know when we learn more about them. He does... their element either augments the element within you to such an extent that it's uncontrollable, like the fires, let us say, or they drain you and devitalize you. They sort of draw off your material or your energy into their own pool. They invade you or they take from you. Those are the ways it happens.
What levels are these?
We're talking about in the lower 18 subplanes now.
All 18 subplanes?
All of them, yes. As a matter of fact, he says that the water devas are the most dangerous in the three worlds, whereas the air devas are the most dangerous upon the physical plane. When we're dealing with aviation and all of that, HPV considers the air types as the most quote-unquote wicked, whatever that means. How can you be wicked if you don't have self-consciousness? Perhaps there are those that have some degree of it. Anyway, he says we're getting into that area where I can't say too much because you can't handle the dangers that are involved here. Or perhaps we think we can.
Some of these dangers are manifest as cancers or, lymphoma or major...
Well, I think they're specific to the magician. In one particular case, the astral body disappears and the soul has to snap the cord. The astral body is just drained off and the whole mechanism becomes useless. In other places, maybe spontaneous human combustion may be involved. These places where people just kind of burn.
Now that's not unheard of.
No.
And you can ask yourself, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. And we generally don't know what happened. In other places, the etheric web burns, and you get inflammation of the brain tissue and other tissues, and you come into a very fatal, potentially fatal situation. So maybe, I don't know, what happens in encephalitis? There's the brain swelling, and there's other diseases where the brain swells and becomes irritated, and so the fires get out of control in those cases. I don't know about what happens.
Somebody who's gone nuts and who's always...
Well, there's just so many ways to go nuts. So I think we really have to differentiate which ways those are. Suffice it to say, I think that in another 200 or 300 years, those who can be trusted will be given the formulas. But I don't think this is going to become general property, although he did say in Atlantean days it was general property. And that you can recover what you knew in Atlantis if you're feeling strongly enough. If you have an intense enough invocation, the words themselves may return to you as you knew them in Atlantis. I don't think it's the recommended way to go. I think the recommended way is to contact the soul who embodies those words, or to have them conferred directly by the Master. Let's see what he says. Much that is to be seen now of a distressing nature in the world can be directly traced to the wrong manipulation of mental matter by man. Well, that was rather the subject we were talking about this morning. Our American health system is the best, and we will spend millions to reinforce that idea. In other words, thought forms create flows of energy. if you are one of those who is benefiting from the flow of energy, you want that thought form in place. Otherwise, your energy flow might be destroyed. The worst thing that can happen to the powers of evil is to have universal energy available in a free manner for man. In other words, the economic incentive, this whole poverty becomes eliminated. Oh, there are other dangers, of course, depending on what we might create given that free energy. But anyway, we will have the leisure to cultivate ourselves, we are told. And that is a coming time. The fifth ray will cooperate with the hierarchy especially, and will produce the leisure in which self-cultivation becomes possible. The economic problem will be solved. That doesn't mean that the economic problem on the astral plane and the mental plane will be solved. That's another matter. In other words, right distribution has to take over. Anyway, wrong manipulation of mental matter by man, usually, would you say, under the influence of selfishness. To erroneous conceptions as to the nature of matter itself. Well, what is materialism but an erroneous conception of matter, as if it is a reality? Although D.K. said, now, with the atomic bomb and the fifth ray ashram's contribution, a death blow has been struck against materialism. In other words, what we're looking at is no longer real and worth, that which is most worth preserving. Other things are more worth preserving. This is an effect. So we hang on for dear life to the appearance. That's materialism, isn't it? So, okay. But we have to, and when it's going to be proven that the appearance, that death is an illusion. That's one step on the way to proving reincarnation is an illusion. Not an illusion. First, death is an illusion, but then that might be just the survival of the physical body. But reincarnation is another thing to prove. But when we prove that something survives, we change our values entirely, don't we? Because then all of that last-minute indulgence, I want to get as much out of my physical form, i.e. pleasure, as I possibly can. We're giving everything to the unreality, aren't we? So we really have to, and I suppose if you really talk to people, most of them believe in survival or even in reincarnation, but certainly in survival. They believe something else happens, right?
They believe in survival in heaven.
Yes, or just survival, period. Something survives the physical body. Where it is, heaven, paradise, or whatever, depends on the church you belong to.
Reincarnation, not that many people
No.
believe in it.
I've heard, actually, that more believe in it than we suspect. So I heard of a poll in this country that took it above 40% or something like that, or even into 60%, You'd be surprised about the closet reincarnationists.
Well, I would be, especially coming from the Bible Belt.
I have been telling you the story of Finland. There was some 5-6 years ago the church made the investigation, and they figured out that in Finland, in the Christian religion, there are about 90% of people who are believing in incarnation. What would mean that the church should kick out every single member from the church.
That's a huge number. Yeah, I remember you told me 80 or 90%.
Yeah, and they were just shocked. Because we are not accepting in the church, of course, that there's only one life, and everybody is believing in that church.
Lutheranism has changed.
One more note. In Los Angeles, I meet a lot of young people in my various dealings, and they are all able to handle this kind of stuff.
Sure.
They're all able to handle it. They're all Roman Catholics, but everybody
And
else.
that's your job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, being born a Roman Catholic, being connected with young people in occultism, it's a natural.
Shar and I spent the weekend with David Spangler this last weekend, and he made an interesting point about materialism, that he said we aren't even good materialists. We don't honor the matter itself.
Yeah, enlightened materialism, what do we call it? Spiritualized materialism is the gift of the Aquarian age. Understanding what matter is, like you said, erroneous conceptions as to matter itself. But that's being straightened out a bit, isn't it now? In the new physics, and we're realizing it is energy after all. Was he here, or did you go to?
I was here.
He was at the
mountain. Coming 4 times this year.
Okay.
So he has been invited, and he's doing workshops of the month.
Well, that's
We'll
great.
begin like a full training for next year 4 times.
What, you'll be there full time at the
We will be there 4 times.
Oh.
Yeah, not full time, 4 times.
It's that Spanish 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Late 18 months, actually.
Okay. And to the dangerous conditions brought about by the united creative attempts of human beings down the centuries. People under the influence of selfishness and pride and all the rest of the Hydra have created some pretty horrible things. So, and in the last class we looked at that whole phantasm, that whole glamour of the 1,000-year Reich, and how it was also for Italy recreating the Roman Empire. And every time people want to recreate their former glory, watch out, then we're in trouble. And recreation of, that's a good word, former glory is doomed to negation. Okay. So anyway, we have mishandled thought, I guess is his message here. And probably, the energy of thought is for the good of all and for the furtherance of the plan of God. Use it not therefore for thy selfish ends. That's the 8th council in the 15 councils of white magic, For the good of all and for the furtherance of the plan of God. That's how thought is supposed to be used. And so we can ask ourselves, page 473, that's the great, furtherance of the plan of God. These counsels, you know them. The energy of thought is for the good of all and furtherance of the plan of God. This is also true. Number 7, act as the thinker and learn it is not right to prostitute thy thought to the base use of separative desire. He says, these humble little statements, we've gone over them before, they will make you an adept if you fulfill them.
Wow.
Yeah. He says they're a little bit thin for the learned aspirant, however, they will make you an adept. Obviously, the learned aspirant is not too close to becoming an adept. Okay. Misunderstandings have arisen as to the purpose of the vital fluids of the universe, and this has added to the distress. So what do you vitalize, what do you devitalize? We're talking here, someone called it the electronic flux. Is that a term familiar? Ethers of various kinds. Tui and I were giving a workshop in Finland about the 5 different mudras for the 5 layers of prana in your vital body. So, I do remember this one, I think.
I will show you then.
This is the highest of the ethers. Upana, or something from your nose to the top of your head. And each one of them has kind of a different, if you want to stimulate them, she has them, but I can't unplug right this second here.
But you have them too.
I have them too, so you tell me where they are and I can show them to you. Yes.
There's a 4th state of matter, which is interesting because there's 4 ethers. The plasma state.
Yeah.
Is a 4th state. The plasma is a very fluid state, and that's a state from which free energy is extracted.
Is it a quasi-etheric state? I mean, is it the closest thing that we have to the ethers that's material?
Yeah, I think it's the highest ether, a state of complete differentiation. It's the atomic subplane.
Do you think that the plasma state, in other words, we're told that the 1st and 2nd ethers are still occult, and that the 3rd, 4th, and 3rd ethers are being revealed. So, do we think that scientists have identified actually the atomic ether, or is the plasma state on the way to the etheric plane per se?
Well, I think if you look at Ledbetter's ethers, the four ethers in relationship to the ultimate physical atom, you'll see that it's just molecular decomposition.
Right.
And it's gradually becoming less and less aggregated until it reaches the atomic level. So we're passing through. We've been in the etheric plane for a long time, scientifically.
How far do you think they've penetrated into it? When they get these subatomic particles and ever reductions, reductions of matter into smaller and smaller units. Do you think they've made it all the way to the atomic plane? Because I'm just wondering about the degree of occultness of those ethers and when their discovery will happen.
Well, if you use Ledbetter as your guide, the atomic plane is 1/3 of a quark.
Okay.
So we've identified all the quarks, and so it's a substate of the quark.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, that's a very interesting piece of it. By the way, the thought forms we have just been creating, what level are they on? Just now. Are they counter-monastic? Only if we really want them to be true. Are they soul necessarily?
No.
It is intellect, isn't it? It is intellect. It is the luminous, increasingly bright intellect, but it is on that level, probably.
A concrete question. How big is quark? What is quark?
Three quarks make a proton.
Quark. Whoop.
And how big is the proton?
The proton is the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. It's smaller than this.
Smaller than this?
Yeah.
Okay, but so the size of neutrons and protons is approximately equal? Neutrons make a little bigger, approximately.
The difference is only an electron, the mass of an electron.
Right.
Different by. Take a proton and then a neutron, a proton and an electron.
And you get the neutron. Yeah. Okay, so three quarks.
An atom includes the electrons, one or more neutrons and protons plus certain orbiting electrons.
Where does he say that three atomic etheric atoms make a quark?
In chemistry, there's many diagrams.
But there were no quarks in those days.
No, but they saw this triangle within the atoms, and those later came to be postulated by some people with a physics background that those are actually quarks that they were seeing. And the substructure of those quarks
is the
ultimate physical atom.
Ultimate physical atom. Okay. All right, good. Very instructive.
But in those levels too, there has to be different sizes, because if we think about the planets are different sizes. Mm-hmm. So some are more overweight than the others.
Certainly the elements themselves vary dramatically in weight and size. So.
But what about their constituents?
No, the protons and neutrons are consistent.
Okay. Good. Okay, so where were we there? The distortion and misunderstandings as to the purpose of the vital fluids. Okay, so basically, let's be simple about it. You give too much energy to some things, not enough to others, and you energize the wrong things and devitalize the things that should be vitalized. So it's just a question of where you put your energy, really. We'll try to find these.
Sorry.
Well, we don't need them for the moment, but if you can find them, I can show them. And apparently, when you use these, you actually stimulate those particular pranas or vital fluids within your system. This would stimulate the highest one. Apparently, the mudras are a secret language, And they actually do, they are very effective, and we're told we are not supposed to share indiscriminately this type of knowledge, although it's everywhere on the internet.
No, these are not, there are the other mudras which are sealed.
Okay.
These are not those mudras.
Well, we'll get that from Tuya, and we'll, okay, so anyway, there have been also, in addition, not only the distortion of the vital fluids, but certain distortions of the astral light. And by the astral light, it's difficult because the word astral in Blavatsky's terms really means etheric, but usually the astral light is considered to be currents of the astral plane at this time. It's not very astral. In other words, it's not shiny. He says it's gray, it's dark, it's obscuring. But there are distortions of the astral light producing a subsidiary or secondary glamour. So you're adding glamour on top of Maya. Or reflected light which intensifies the Maya already created. By reflected light, it's not the light of truth. Oopsie. I think I better go back.
Take the PowerPoint, then you would have them there.
Yeah, dear, I have to find it. So we'll show it later, a little bit later, because we need to make up ground. Not the light of truth, but it's, what do you call it, sort of a miasma, or an ear lift, we sometimes call it, or, an ear lift is a light that leads you astray. It's sometimes appearing over the swamps, or swamp light. And it leads you, you think you're going somewhere and you find yourself in the swamp. It's a very good kind of metaphor for misguided, distorted light. It's delusion, really. Remember, we've been told that the Dark Lodge works through three kinds of representatives according to their ray: the destroyer of souls, the deluder of souls, and manipulator of souls. So this secondary light is the deluder of souls. It leads you towards a false goal, and then you become ensnared. The blind leading the blind, and so forth. Okay, producing a secondary glamour or reflected light which intensifies the Maya already created. This secondary reflection has been produced by man himself in the evolutionary attempt to balance the pairs of opposites. Now, mostly by pairs of opposites, what do we mean, usually? Okay, well, all of these, I would call, what you're offering here is, in ordinary man's mind, that's what it is. But when we as disciples talk about the pairs of opposites, mostly, what do we mean?
Personality, soul.
That's what we mean. Soul and personality. That's mostly what we mean. Now, I gave a talk at the conference, and I tried to discriminate between opposites which have no moral distinction, high, low, in, out, up, down, etc., and those which have a moral distinction. Good and bad, and refined and crude, and all the rest of it. So there are vertical pairs of opposites, and there are horizontal pairs of opposites. But usually, apparently, we, in trying to deal with the inner pole and the outer pole, have created this secondary glamour, aided and abetted by the Black Lodge in early Atlantean times. We are responsible, but they came a long way in helping us to do that by intensifying material desire.
Okay.
That was their method.
They intensified all of the 18 subplanes.
They did, but especially in those days, the astral plane, because there wasn't that much in the mind to intensify. Those who were beginning to abstract themselves from the emotional level could see through it, and they became the initiates of the time, but the majority of people were totally misled. And we've got 80% Atlanteans out there right now. We are told that we are the Atlanteans of the Atlantean days. But there were Lemurians in those days who are the Atlanteans of the modern day. So in other words, I would say Kama Manus is 80-85% of humanity at the moment. Somewhere he gives that kind of figure, and you can kind of infer what he means. We don't have all that much clear intellect in the world today, and the intellect that we do have that may be very sharp is at the disposal of desire. I mean, look at the sharp intellects on, let's say, Wall Street. Really sharp. But are they serving the soul, by and large? Or is desire driving this whole thing? And I think the answer is obvious there in many cases. However refined, intelligent these people may be, they are driven by the inverted pentagram. I mean, they're using the mind as the inverted pentagram. And the true, socially responsible investors and others who really see what's happening, they are fewer, far fewer, I think. Yeah. Okay, it's very short-sighted. So the secondary reflection has been produced by man himself in the evolutionary attempt to balance the pairs of opposites. How do you in your life attempt to balance the pairs of opposites? So what do, as you try to walk the noble middle path here?
Well, you use meditation techniques for one thing.
Sure, yeah, you do that, and you basically you try to make sure you're not carried away by lunar life, don't you? And yet you try not to lose touch with the world either, don't you? Because if you lose touch with the world, you're no earthly good, right, as they say?
Is the service a method to do the balancing?
It's a good point. It's a good point. Because, you always got to be present there with your soul quality, and yet you're helping the condition as it is. So let's put that in. I think that's a very good point. Service as a method of balancing pairs of opposites. Okay. All right. Pairs of opposites, and has produced a condition which must be surmounted before the true occult balancing begins. So what could he mean by true occult balancing, and the kind of things that have to be corrected now before such balancing can begin? I mean, maybe we've been discussing a little bit about true occult balancing. It has something to do with people who know something about the soul.
Yeah.
But what about the just good-bad condition in the world at the moment? What about the unfairness issues of the moment? What about the injustice issues of the moment? These are not yet occult issues per se. Yes?
Some of the better thinkers they talk about this is the stories which dominate our thought. Some of these stories are things like government is bad. Reagan got this one going, and succeeded with others. Trickle-down economics. Rising tide all votes. We have a lot of thoughts about this. We have some things that are created with the stories, and so what people are saying today, we're going to change the story.
Right.
That's Wall Street. Really, Wall Street capitalism drives the whole world's going to fall apart, as opposed to...
But that's just the story.
That's the story, precisely.
A lead story.
What capitalism, what's true values could be, should have been, in some places are being utilized. So we have to change the story. And this is how it's being done today. There's people coming out saying, wait a minute, these are just distortions.
So we have to correct the worst abuses before we can really begin to think about what is the soul and how is it to balance the personality. In other words, we have a lot of house cleaning to do in the world before occult cultivation can enter the mind of thinking people.
So would it be
Clean house,
yeah.
would it be like the true occult balancing has to do with the vertical, so the balancing with the soul, and that before would have to do with the horizontal balancing, the pair of opposites in the...
In many respects, but I agree with you, but when you look at things like just and unjust, good and evil, there is a vertical dimension there also. So there are sort of lower-level vertical dimensions that have to be sorted out. If injustice is too big, the soul can't even get through. So as you do this just and unjust balancing, hungry and overfed balancing, these are things that prepare the vehicle for the reception of a truer picture of what the soul is.
I remember one of the letters that DK wrote to one of his members saying that this guy had gone too far that way. Mm-hmm. He was too worked up over these injustices.
Yeah, in a state of irritation then.
Yes, that was more because his personality or just dwelling too long on one thing or what. But, you talk about balancing. Or
So either way.
You kind of, yeah, exactly. You kind of think about, well, if you focus on the good part of it, then that's balancing. But, you know, you go too far that way, you've created a different imbalance.
Exactly. So we have to see, you know, it's all about too much or too little, and how that too much or too little is working right now in our own system. Because when things are relatively peaceful in terms of the quality and interplay of energy, a new field can come in. And when you're all stressed about too little or too much, the new field is not coming in. So.
And because it's occult, it means it's based upon the knowledge of the unseen.
Yep, right. Good point. Yeah, in other words, the science of true balancing. You know, when we're studying occultism, it is very much that. We're learning how to manage all these different energies. We identify them, we find out what they do, and we try to get them in their right relationship. It's about right relationship, isn't it? So, you know, basically, I think a lot of us have to try to detect the imbalances in our own system right at this time. We all have them, you know, otherwise we'd be free beings, you know, at the fourth initiation.
And, you know, I was just, not too long time ago, I met a group, and it just brought to my mind, do you remember when you were starting, that how much it was crying always in the group?
How much crying there was?
Do you remember? Yeah. The second. No. When people are starting meeting in spiritual arena, so it means that the beginning is a lot of these emotional upheavals.
For personal reasons.
Of course, because the energies of the soul that the group is invoking, so the energies of the soul is descending, and it is causing us all of that. Now we don't even recognize in that sense. We recognize the power it comes, but we are not all of the places.
No, but you know, there's a higher form of weeping too, which is kind of interesting.
No, I don't mean that. I mean that when all these things at home and the friends and the ex-lovers and all that is going all around, but we all have them still there, but they are not any more causing because we have gained the knowledge, and we can place them now into
proportion.
Yeah.
So all of this abuse might be regarded as the sum total of that great manifestation created only by man, called the dweller on the threshold. Now, remember that we don't even see a glimpse of the united dweller until the third initiation. So first glimpse of dweller. I think of it of full dweller and angel at the third degree.
What do you mean, full dweller and angel?
Well, he says that at the third initiation you catch your first glimpse of the dweller and the angel. But I think as the unified entities. In other words, we may catch a tail here, a claw there, a fang here or there on the way up to the third degree, but we don't get the full vision of that thing, fleeting vision, until the third degree period. And then, as a comparable balance to that vision, the angel comes into instantaneous view too. Because in a way, the third initiation is the vision initiation. The sight opens up. You know, first degree hearing, second degree touch, third degree sight. So we actually see something in an integrated form, and then by the time the fourth degree comes, it's a very full standoff between these two, with the humanities dweller thrown into the mix.
I was just thinking this, the devil in the eyes.
Yeah.
And because in fourth degree we pass that stage where this frozen world starts, and in that sense we can see it. And before that, because we are part of that frozen world, we just see those glimpses through our thought forms.
Just little things. We all know we have bad habits. We have things that are wrong with us, and other people point them out. But the unified dweller, to see what this ancient agglomeration really is, that I don't think we could stand it. You know, we'd be like Medusa. We'd turn to stone. You know, it'd be the Medusa's head, really.
And that is about the thought form. So the dweller has so strong alignment, how everything will be frozen. They are caught into those sword statues.
Yes, and we have to find a way to loosen the hold and refine the dweller, basically, refine it so that it becomes a thing of high quality. I mean, after we've gotten rid of the worst sins, we still have this integrated thing that thinks it's itself, the integrated personality.
It makes me wonder if this full dweller refers to different aspects that it's unified in one, or it's really, when it comes down, it's just really one dweller that we do have. You know what I mean?
I think we do. I think we catch a lot of our sort of physical dweller around the first degree and our emotional dweller around the second. But I think we have it's the period of the integrated personality, isn't it? The third degree is the integrated personality, the truly integrated personality. So I think it's at that point we see the threefold whole, the triple being. My guess. Yeah. Sorry.
There's an interesting idea in NS that the causal body itself is formed from substance of the previous solar system and tinged with that color of the previous solar system.
Let's see.
Yellow.
Let's see. Well, okay, there's something to it in one respect, that anything below the Buddhic plane is part of the dense physical body of the Solar Logos. And the dense physical body of the Solar Logos was, in a way, cultivated in the earlier solar system, and there's a certain leftover, which is a non-principled leftover. There's kind of a gray area in there with the higher mental plane, but from a solar logoic perspective, it is not a principle. From a planetary logoic perspective, it is already quasi-legitimate, So maybe it is so. And the color orange is interesting because that's the fundamental color of all causal bodies, and it is a color cultivated in the previous solar system.
Yeah, but then it is also what he says that the highest plane is yellow.
Of the causal body, of the highest subplane?
Subplane, the three are the yellow and then orange. And yellow is the one which is brought into the sacrifice of petals.
That makes sense, but I'll tell you what, all petals have orange in them, every one of them, and it's all on the higher mental plane. So
so it's a mental, high mental, and low mental.
And I'm recalling some of this Leadbeater stuff about those egos who individualize through pride, where the color orange, is involved. Yeah, okay.
Well, actually, do you know what? Because the fourth plane is this, the plane of
the pivot plane.
Yes, and it is orange, so I would think it is, and there is the mental unit. So I would think it is that substance, orange substance in the petals, and then the yellow, which comes the later part of the earlier solar system, because yellow was the color how we will believe.
A bridging color, but take a look though. The causal body is made of substance of the higher mental planes. There's no question about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
But still the fourth is the etheric plane of the mental.
True. We have the color blue associated with the higher three subplanes of the mental plane, and blue and orange are complements. So that has to be factored in as well. Okay, one of the greatest impediments upon the path of return, and one for which man is distinctly responsible within occult limits, are those animated forms which he has produced ever since the middle of the Atlantean root race, when the mind factor began slowly to assume increasing importance. Probably if we were talking with Philip about this, he would say that it was the 4.3 part of the Atlantean root race, because that was the time when the Mahachohan, who had been here since the 4.2, the second subrace of the Atlantean root race, called in the moon chain egos out of Pralaya, and they were intelligent egos. So, but still selfish. And they came in, by the way, with some petals open, right? And we're told that. So if we ever wonder whether there were egoic petals on the moon chain, we have to say yes. Within the causal body there were. So the mind factor would slowly begin to increase in its importance, and then, in 4.4, lots of creativity, but of what kind? With war. 4.4. The selfishness, he gives good descriptions here. The selfishness, the sordid motives. What does sordid mean to you? Nasty, style, unspeakably base.
There's no light. It's kind of hidden.
Hidden. Yeah, there's different connotations. When you look at something totally degraded, you think of it as sordid. And it's a fallen low, and ugly, and sick, and horrible. Okay. Just trying to cheer us up here?
Colorful.
So when you have lost your status and fallen into abasement or something, the debasing, sordid motives, the prompt response to evil impulses for which the human race has been distinguished.
Prompt response.
You don't remember, don't forget, we are all Atlanteans. We are former Atlanteans. So probably none of us, except maybe a few, if there's any primary lotuses in the group, have escaped the Atlantean era. Is there anybody here that looks like a good candidate for a primary lotus? Let me see. I'm going to do a scan here.
I
wasn't it fun,
You mean primary lotus, you mean the Earth camp?
A primary lotus actually came either from Vulcan or maybe Mercury. They had the first and the third petal open. But so they were intelligent but not relational, So it's kind of a fifth-rate group in a way that needed to develop sentient response. But anyway, most of us were distinguished by evil impulses. It's hard to imagine now being such nice people. But in the big movie you get to see of all of your lives, as you sit there alone in the theater for a long time, perhaps the review of the Atlantean period you'll want to go out and get popcorn or something while that's Okay, the trouble is you can't get out, it's a must-see. They lock the doors behind it. Like that wonderful movie Illusion with Kirk Douglas. Some of you have seen that? Really good. And he's alone in the Akashic Record Theater, and he's seeing what has been and what might be, and when I was a kid, I had a vision of that, of seeing, I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I kept on thinking about seeing my past, on the movies, and I kept on trying to correct it. Yeah. It was, those things stay with you. I was always also trying to make a circle revolve totally equally, so that all were equal. There was some Libran thing, in my mind when I was just a kid. Now I'm trying it again. All right. Anyway, a gigantic thought form hovers over the entire human family.
You missed that first sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is good. Oh, sick, horrible, yes. Oh, it's a good sentence. The prompt response to evil impulses has brought about a condition of affairs unparalleled in the system. Don't you feel like an outcast, Think of it. This is, that's Earth. Yeah. They're saying on the other planets.
Well, what does he mean by that?
A horrible condition of degraded and sordid evil, unparalleled in the solar system.
Like really bad evil and really...
Yeah, we're bad. Bad.
This is our prompt response.
Yeah, we're ready to go. We're just ready to go with matter.
We pick it up right away. Yeah.
We're somehow ruled by this very physical deva that has totally captured the Black Lodge members. They are servitors of this great David life. And this is materialism again. You see, as long as we keep serving that which is not a principle, we have a prompt response to evil.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question about that. It was Mary David in one of her talks talked so much about man's purpose for being here.
Yeah.
and that we chose this particular path in order to redeem all the unredeemed matter of the previous souls.
Yeah, something like that.
So, would that be why we have such a ready response, such a great propensity, because this is leftover from a previous soul?
It's all left over, but isn't it?
Turning to the left.
Left over, yeah.
Well, what's that about? I mean, it doesn't. If that's our job, is to redeem it.
Yeah, but
how do we screw up so bad?
Well, we had some help, you know, and don't forget that things are out of alignment. And I will say to myself that the evil of ignorance is permissible and expectable and redeemable, but the evil of willful refusal to abide by the intended program is a whole other thing. So even though we had an unpleasant job, we didn't need to make it all the worse by adding to it this willful refusal to move on. See, a lot of us liked that because it was moonchain stuff, it was earlier solar system, and we wanted to keep our prerogatives. Now, the worst example of that is the Black Lodge. They really were initiates of the first system, and they really wanted to keep their hold over their power, which would have to be relinquished in a second-ray system. So they willfully refused.
But we also have to remember that in the matter of the earlier solar system, there are like ready-built patterns to which way the direction of the energy flows. So it's like putting the garment of which is full of worms or something which goes under your skin, and then you are of that same pollution.
It was going to be bad, but it didn't need to be as bad as we made it. You know, and that's somehow the misalignment between one of the stars in the Great Bear and one of the stars in the Pleiades and our system, and especially our Earth with its third-ray personality, made us the place where these resistant energies were most focused. So whatever monads there were, the majority of them being third-ray monads coming into our planet and Mars and Saturn, had to take on a task which was much more difficult than any place else in the solar system, and in fact we resonated to those retrogressive tendencies by our very nature.
Well, I'm not sure if D.K. talks about this, but in those Solarian books that Maurice Cook wrote some years ago, he was talking about the fact that on this planet, the emotional nature is large and is designed to be so as an experiment in a different kind of love. And he says that the blessing of this is that we have the most beautiful looking people in the whole solar system. The most creativity in terms of artistry. The trouble is, the astral body is a real huge problem. And I think that prompt response to evil has to do something with that overstimulation of desire that the Black Lodge.
Yes.
His basic point was that no place else do we see what might be called the human level having the same kind of astral nature that we have here on the planet, and it was designed to be an experiment. That was his idea.
You know, it could be. I'm recalling Star Wars and the space bar, and I would have to agree we look better than that.
These misalignments in like the Pleiades and in the Great Bear. What comes first? You know, is what created those misalignments?
Well, I tend to blame it on the higher ups. I don't think we created those misalignments. I think it is devolving evil. You know, it's on the third ray line. This is the problem. And I've sometimes said that I believe our one about whom not may be said has a third ray monad. You know, we can argue about that a long time, but it's got a powerful third ray. And something is wrong in that larger system which has come down to all of us. But stars like Sirius and planets like Venus have pretty well defeated that problem. Yeah.
There's a clear idea in some of Lucille's works that the planet Earth has taken on the karma of redemption, just as William was saying, and that it was just like we have organs in our body that accumulate the toxins and
the liver.
Yeah, the liver and the kidneys.
Yeah.
That the earth is something, has been carrying that karma, the kidney karma, for a long period of time, and that we've reached virtually reached the stage where we can go beyond that, and there'll be other someone in the system taking that over. But he also says that there's operative a law of compensation, which for whatever sacrifice we make, there is a compensation, a spiritual compensation, which comes out of it eventually.
Kind of reminds one of the Emerson essay on compensation. He develops that main idea, no matter how bad it gets. But you know what's interesting is the Earth rules the base of the spine. Okay, so that's pretty well established. It has etheric connections. It maybe has a connection here in the solar plexus too. But atop the kidneys are the adrenal glands. And, you know, they probably are generating enough energy to clear the system. I don't think the kidneys per se are ruled by the base of the spine. I'm not sure, but it's close enough anatomically that it could be. So if we can, you know, find the cleansing function of the base of the spine, we might have a clue there. And it's not bad that the Earth, think of it this way, Earth's heyday comes in the next solar system. So in a way, you know, if you look at your own system, your base of the spine is not the roaring center, is it? You're working on other things first. But when you finally reach the initiatic stage, and you're really beyond the third initiation, etc., then your Earth, your base of the spine, will come into fuller power. So although we appear to be a little bit retarded, a little bit retrogressive in the system, the timing is right, because our day is to come. And this is actually the crisis spot right now for the redemption. I mean, our symbol is the cross, after all. So I think, you know, from a perspective of occult physiology, we need to find out what it is the base of the spine does that is of a cleansing nature. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's the whole cleaning out the basement, you know. Maybe that labor in Aquarius that Hercules undertook has a lot to do with cleaning out the lower subplanes, you know, ruled by the cross.
You know, there was a very interesting experiment of kidneys and liver done in India, where they were emphasizing, was it half a year or so, the mental order to kidneys and liver to function super well. And they realized that in organs, kidneys and liver was the first who is responding. They were putting like, is it possible that liver thinks? That there is kind of a structure that the liver can decide how much it is actually working and functioning. And in Chinese medicine, liver is look like the mother of all the other organs. It was very...
Can you say it another way by saying that your thought forms could actually determine how well the liver functions?
That is what they were coming up to. And that it is really liver, like that the lungs and the heart can be learned to be ordered by yogi. We know that because there are those muscles. Mm-hmm. But the liver is really the one which is responding. But we know because liver is related to the, what is this little guy, what is that what can make stones?
Gallbladder.
Yes, it is related to that. Which is all about how the digestion is, how well it is working.
It makes the bile.
Right.
Yes, I thought you were trying to figure it.
Bile. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, I just wanted to point out one more thing real quick. It may not be important at all, but it's something that always comes up for me. You said something a minute ago, and I can't remember what it was then, about, there being some sort of reward or something.
Compensation.
Well, in the Christian teachings, that idea is very common. I mean, that they put it in different terminology, your reward in heaven, crown, etc. But it's always amazing to me how, when you look at different religions, they're all saying the same thing as the wisdom teachings, because basically that's where they all came from. But and the Bible is just so full of it. It's just everything in there, can really be related to these teachings.
Right.
Okay.
Thinking the light is in the eyes of the liver.
The light is in the eyes of the. What are the eyes of the liver, or how do we look at that?
That's a joke.
Oh, but you're so deadpan. You have to believe it, And I'm writing it down, Yeah. Okay.
But you can tell the health of the liver by looking at the eyes.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Jaundice. All right.
But that is true, because when you are fasting, your eyes become so bright.
Yes.
After the fasting. When one has fasted.
Fasting.
Yes, so all the toxins, when they are, not all the toxins, but a lot of toxins are away, and then your eyes are very, very bright.
This is Surya's way of telling us all that there will be no lunch today. As we just...
I'm glad you brought that up. I have a menu with all of the items are numbered. And a piece of paper with a box, write a number.
Technology. No more of this. And make sure you pass it on to everyone.
A lot more variety this year.
Make sure it comes back to you.
No, why would I say that?
Didn't want to have any.
That's true, but only I want to share that experience with everybody. Okay, a gigantic thought form hovers over the entire human family, built by men everywhere during the ages, energized by the insane desires and evil inclinations of all that is worst in man. I guess, DK speaks from perspective, and usually the word insane means, totally unhealthy. And kept alive by the promptings of his lower desires. So the word vampire will come into this. This thought form has to be broken up and dissipated by man himself. If you made it, you have to unmake it. During the latter part of this round, before the conclusion of the cycle, and its dissipation will be one of the forces tending to the production of interplanetary pralaya. Now, interplanetary pralaya might be chain pralaya. We're not sure here yet. And also remember, we have two kinds of rounds. We have the round that is circulating within our own chain, and we have the larger round which goes from chain to chain. When we're told that Venus is in its fifth round, we have every reason to think it's a scheme round and not a little round on one of its chains. So we're not sure what he's talking about here, but it certainly would prepare the way for the judgment day. And the latter, let's put it like this, if he is speaking of scheme rounds, then the judgment day occurs in the latter part of this scheme round, or at least, in other words, it's still occurring within our group of chain rounds, but it's already moving us forward into the fifth major round. This doctrine of little rounds and big rounds is implicit in the teaching. He sometimes mentions it. I think I'll make a compilation on it, but you have to kind of infer it. He doesn't come out really boldly and speak it, but sometimes there's a couple of references where there's just no other conclusion that you can make. So,
what are we talking about here? Well, yeah, that's huge. Yeah, how many years are we talking about here?
Well, even the little round has millions of years to go.
Yeah.
So the latter part of this little round in our particular chain, well, if the sixth root race is going to last how long?
10 million.
10 million. And, perhaps we're increasing in the number of years that the latter races last. We may have descended to a low point and then rise again to a longer point. We've got maybe some millions of years to go before the latter part of this round. So anyway, the thing is, it prepares the way for the judgment day. In other words, breaking up the thought form prepares the way for the judgment day. And when we find the judgment day taking place, breaking up the form tends to the judgment day. We find that taking place in the 5th round. Now, I suspect that it will not be the 5th scheme round when this occurs. I don't even know, whether we're going to go the full 7 scheme rounds. Venus did not. Venus has gone 5 scheme rounds, and it might have gone 7. And we are supposed to model ourselves after Venus. Who knows whether we will be able to catch up or not, as we are supposed to be, we are told.
Are you saying that Venus doesn't have to go the ladder to the
That's right.
Because they
That's
did
right.
everything.
They did it well. They're a bit like the Christ, doing everything well fast. Venus is like the Christ, and you kind of wonder by analogy whether Sirius didn't do the same.
Sure.
There's an analogy between Sirius, Venus, and the Christ.
So it's kind of like the individual who takes these initiations in a series in just a few lifetimes, who does everything rapidly.
Yeah, not having to take as long as many others have to take on that. Yes,
So what happens with Venus when it has done everything in 5 rounds?
It will. It is already heading into a state of obscuration, or its principles are being withdrawn into the inner worlds. Probably they are there already.
Is there anything written in the literature that gives us examples of life on Venus and what they achieved and how they achieved?
Only little hints here and there. Has everybody filled out their...
We're working on it.
It's coming down to it.
Not that I care. I'm really indifferent about lunch.
Well,
and after I talk to Glenda about it, I'm going to be incapable of lunch.
Well, you didn't respond to Mark. No, not so much ignorance.
I just said there are little things that are said. And he tells us the names of the lives on each one of the planets. But he doesn't tell how they got to be that way or why they are called that necessarily. But if you go into Leadbeater and others of these more psychic types, they kind of begin to describe what others look like. And if you go into, who's the Swedish seer? Yeah. There he really starts describing life on other planets. But Blavatsky says he was, sincere but deluded. So, when we get there, we'll find out. And meanwhile, we have the Star Wars space bar. Okay, so interplanetary collide. It is this, and I love this term, it is this piece of creative bungling. Now, it's a major bungle, I suppose.
It's creative.
But creative, like it gives a new meaning to bungalow. This piece of creative bungling, it might be so called, which the great ones are occupied in destroying. So the hierarchy is destroying this messy carpet, this horrible thing that the third ray has woven. And remember what happened according to the secret doctrine in the days before the solar angels came. We had the dog-headed man and the fish-bodied whatever, In other words, out of the leftover patterns of the previous round, lesser and unintelligent spirits tried to cobble man together. And they did not have the beauty of the higher planes that we've talked about here. The solar angels had that divine geometry, and they made a mess. And so along came the solar angels basically saying, what did he say? Water men, terrible and bad, they created. Those, these water men, terrible and bad. So the solar angels said, let us dry them. So they basically dried out and destroyed all of these unintended, monstrous Frankensteinian forms.
Including the mermaid, I suppose.
Well, an occasional mermaid, maybe less, I don't know. Mermen, mermaids, they weren't very pretty looking, And they were out of alignment with the beauty intended. They were not built in divine geometry, sure. So anyway, we've all been participating in a piece of creative bungling. And the great ones, and we as disciples, we will be involved in the destruction. We too must destroy. Do you feel you're involved in destroying creative bungling?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do you do it?
Well, by purifying our vehicles,
Yes.
bringing in the soul light.
And what about the words you speak?
That's purification of the lower vehicles, I think. It's a lot to do with that.
Because, there's like patterning and repatterning, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And
we create with our words.
yeah. And we create and recreate. And when we reinterpret something for someone, right, we help them unpattern their creative bungling, don't we? Yeah. There's so many things about the, but how does he say, a window breaks, and though the weaver cries aloud, blinded by the sudden light, the sun shines in upon his woven carpet and shows his basic ugliness, reveals his basic ugliness. So then, he has to do something about that, and basically what he has to do is weave again. Only this time, weave in the light of day, weave according to the plan. So we have to reweave, we have to reweave, we have to repattern, we have to take the bungling and make it beautiful. Under the law of karma, this has to be dissipated by those who have created it. The work of the masters has to be carried on, therefore, indirectly. And why is that? They can't unweave the carpet, can they? I mean, they cannot repattern the bungling. Why can they not do that? Yeah, law of freedom from Sirius. It has to be respected.
Well, it's interesting that they must carry some karma. They must have been creative bunglers in their day, but somehow, as perfected human being, they have transcended that.
The tendency to do it more. So then, as they stand in a position, well, absolutely. I mean, they must have been bunglers in their day, and basically, some of them are very related to the karma of the previous solar system as it's working out here. I mean, you can take about 4 or 5 of the major masters, and you can just trace them to the previous solar system. In all probability, by inference, according to what DK has said. Okay, so.
Pardon me, this law of freedom from Sirius, I've never heard this before.
Well, the law of karma, the law of freedom, those are 2 major Syrian laws. And this is the reason why the masters of the White Lodge cannot interfere with the will process of any human being. Even though they may stand on horrified and agonized by what's happening, what human beings are doing, like a mother or father might look at what their child is doing, try to prevent it, but when you try to prevent it, you intervene and you stop the will process, it oftentimes shows itself again later. They've got to outgrow it themselves, Okay. Anyway, indirectly. And must take the form of illuminating the sons of men in gradually increasing degree so they can see clearly this dweller on the threshold of the new life, and the antagonist who stands between the 4th and 5th kingdoms of nature. Okay, this is really interesting. If we can see it, we can do something about it. The reason we can't deal with our dweller is we don't see it. Okay. So the masters, let's just say, masters make us see the dweller, and we then do something about it. First of all, we're horrified and we say, oh, master of my life, this wretched, horrible thing, this is not I, right? As in the esoteric catechism. But then later we realize complaining will not really do the job, so he says, turn on the light more fiercely, now what you see. And then you see the other part of yourself. Now, remember that every dweller is a good sign in a way, because if you're seeing it, you are on the threshold. And the new life is through the portal into the next dimension, 5th kingdom of nature. So if that dweller is shaping up, what do they say? Perfection calls imperfection to the surface. And the light reveals the darkness within us. So around some of the old saints, they say the most horrible phenomena occurred, on the periphery of their very intense life. Essentially brought that forward. It's the old story of the true illumined saint somehow calling forth all of this demonstration of negativity at the periphery of his aura.
Purposely?
No. It just happens because the light reveals the darkness, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do that. No. And we you know how it is when we have a good new intention to do something really right, and all of a sudden up comes everything that's of a negative nature. So dwell on the threshold, you know, is a good sign. It means the threshold is close, but it has to be dissipated. Right.
Yeah, you know, I'm really wondering about how this dweller moving forward, really, how bad he will really be. Because we're and he said, we're gaining new psychologies in this century, he said. In fact, new psychologies will come, and he did, in fact, come. So as we are consciously purifying our whole nature, that dweller is going to be less bad than, let's say, a dweller that the space has space, because they didn't have these psychologies.
Well, we have some techniques now, right?
Numerous.
But generally, it is said about the dweller generally, whatever techniques we may have, worse than you can imagine. That's what's usually said about the dweller.
I know, but what I'm saying is that we're moving, just like DK said, look, the disciples of today are not the disciples of yesterday.
Sure.
We have different methods for dealing with them, and so there's going to be, you know.
I'm trying to discriminate the methods from the thing. So the method might help us get through the thing much faster. But the thing itself...
But the thing itself will not be as ugly because we've dealt with it along the way. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well...
I think that it is still what DK says, that he calls that beast. And that beast, when we are really there, is so full of that kind of instinctual life that it is ready to attack and really eat us, like he says.
See, I think what happens about this is here's our range at first. Our range, here's our knowledge, and here's the beast we see. And I think it goes like this. Until you reach the absolute top of your ability,
right.
And therefore the worst of the negativity is revealed at that point. But of course I don't deny and do agree with you that our psychological skills have really increased.
But also the dweller, we have to remember that it is developing. Mm-hmm. So it is also gaining all the time as long we come. Yeah.
No, it's not. How is it that dweller continues to develop if we turn the corner and now we're creating consciously and we're creating with our speech?
Because the whole humanity develops.
So we are adding to humanity's redemption to the service of our own redemption.
Sure. But in some sense, what I understand, what you are saying is that we are purifying, but I think that because when we think about hierarchy, that hierarchy is fighting with the cosmic evil, and evil also, which is collective evil, that the real point when one is going through that is the mystery of the evil, that it is so evil. Otherwise, it would be easier.
Well,
it would be easier to deal with that very, very horrible thing.
I want to say that humanity eventually invokes the whole Black Lodge. In other words, I say the more powerful humanity gets, the Black Lodge will be revealed for what it is. And that will be the sign that humanity is strong enough to pass through and beyond the Black Lodge and negate them. So right now, we don't evoke the Black Lodge at all. We invoke some minor demonstrations of evil by comparison. But when the bright light under Vulcan of humanity, let's say, is really shining, then everything that is evil will be made very clear. And I think it will be a very drastic vision, like PK says of them, worse than you can possibly imagine. He even used the word possibly.
He talks there somewhere where it is the key of the door where evil dwells. That the evil, that evil of the dweller of the humanity is so strong, and that's why they call that beast, that it has to be held to longer period of that to the fourth, fifth round, that we can deal of that part of the beast.
And any references of when humanity will be ready to confront that evil?
Well, there is an interesting reference that you can infer about humanity's ability to stand with massed intent in several hundred years to confront world glamour. Like right now, it can't do that yet, but it can confront world Maya together first. If you want to, and I wouldn't recommend it, okay, but if you want to have the experience of evoking your dweller, then just ask yourself and stay with it for about 5 minutes, what's the worst I can imagine? I wouldn't recommend it. Because probably it's an active invocation, in a way, of subterranean forces, and you will find presented to you stuff that you don't want to hold in your mind. It's a plutonic act. Like he says, the glamour of the subterranean forces is a seventh-rate glamour. But if you really want to find out some constituent elements of your dweller, try that. Well, it just depends on what you want to see.
It depends on what you do with it once you see
it too. Because when let's say you go to a psychologist, and it's a depth psychologist, and they're working in the realm of fluid and all that, over many months, fragments of that kind of thing are going to come up, And eventually you'll see that conglomerate image, which, as you're right, DK says, until you pass through the Scorpio experience, it is not wise to deal with that. But then comes what he calls the deliberate invocation of memory. Under Scorpio, under Pluto, etc. And then, I suppose you just have to deal with it at some point.
What does he mean until you have passed through the Scorpio experience?
Second initiation. He says if you try to retrace your dreams, before that time, it can lead to many dire revelations through past incarnations. I think he deals with that in the Scorpio chapter, or maybe in esoteric psychology when he's talking about dream life. And he says it will pull up stuff you cannot handle. But after the second initiation, you should be able to handle that more, I guess.
And what about the conscious invocation of karma to kind of work through it?
You can do it. You can do it. Like the old story about T. Suba Rowe. I've told you that story, haven't I?
What?
T. Suba Rowe, Madame Blavatsky's cohort and fellow fourth degree initiate. Master, please give me all my karma. So he gets Hodgkin's disease and dies. Did you ever see that picture? There's a man, some of the Jehovah's Witnesses, they won't go into surgery, So I forget what disease this is, but the man had no face. It was all a tumor. It was all... No, it was worse. Worse.
Oh, God.
You don't... But there's an example. It was just all, And there's a special name for that disease, and it's worse than Hodgkin's disease. It's like that. But there was a man also standing next to him who had a disfigured face, but the parents allowed the operations to occur as it went on. So obviously all that stuff working out through you. T. Suba Rowe asked for the hastening of his karma. And he meant business. He was almost a fourth degree. And the master gave it to him. The masters can manipulate our karma. They can hold back certain destructive forces so we can be useful in certain ways for a certain time. They can manipulate that. The soul can do that too. It's all kind of, engineering to get the most out of us in the circumstance.
The story of Jesus' crucifixion may be an example of that. I don't know. The way it's presented in the Bible is different. But, he willingly, if this story is true, went to it.
Sure. And at the fourth degree, with clear eyes, clear-sighted, you deliberately pass through that. It's a conscious choice. But Master K.H. said, until you have earned the right to take the fourth initiation. In other words, you can't just say, hey, I want to be a martyr, it's time for the fourth initiation. You have to have a very clear understanding and be completely detached from what you're doing. And then he talked about Master Jesus on the cross, didn't he? and his degree of detachment and his degree of compassion on the cross. Now, of course, you understand that kind of death, this man was Joshua, the great general. So, I guess we all, in the end, it all balances out for us. Every time a Son of Man stands upon the probationary path, their work is facilitated, the work of the Masters. For it means that one small stream of life energy is directed into new channels and away from the old stream, which tends to vitalize and feed the evil form, and one more, I like this term, and one more conscious assailant can be trained to cooperate with the work of destruction. That's a great Aries term, isn't it? Well, assailant is a person who attacks you.
Isn't that making myself feel that, you have one more stream for good and devitalizing the evil? Every time a person becomes enlightened, it's helping all of humanity.
Sure.
Well, sure it does. And it doesn't tell us how evil is evil. It only says we're going to do better at overcoming it. So, anyway, to become do you find yourself to be a conscious assailant, or do those words put you off?
Well, depends on how one assails.
Depends on day.
No, really, I'm thinking about the writers are talking about the universe story, thinking of Blaine Elgin and Living Universe.
Sure.
These people are writing about how the universe is and giving a new story, which is an assailant on materialism. But it's beautiful. It's elegant. It's articulate.
Sure. It's not bloody Mars, is it?
No, it's a very different kind of assailing. It's enticing. It's saying that here's how things are. Let's go with this story. Okay,
I think that's very good. If you want to see, DK's, the closest he ever comes to promoting assailing in the old version is to read the meditation in Rule 10, where he asks you to walk on that path, wielding destruction and clearing out the refuse in the courts. So that is a more frontal method, but there's all the different ray methods of assailing. Okay. So
doesn't he often more invite us to work into the construction of the new, but not get engaged into?
He invites us
the old.
In that particular meditation. He invites the first ray method of directly confronting the old and driving it back onto the astral plane.
But often, I got that, but often doesn't he invite us more into constructing the new and letting go?
The power of substitution. He invites us to substitute the better reality for the lesser reality. Sure. This is a specific way of working. And most of us, I think, may be better at doing the method of substitution and, constructive substitution. Every time an initiate is admitted to the lodge degrees, it means that a new and powerful agent, that is one who represents a higher power, is available for the bringing down of force from higher levels to aid the work of disintegration. Well, I guess he's just saying that hierarchy does have some first-rate work.
Yeah.
Even though it's a second-rate body. And, not everybody has the stomach for this kind of stuff because it can be very dangerous. Because, we're told they will attack you in your physical, and if that doesn't work, they will attack you in your astral, and if that doesn't work, then they will attack you on all three vehicles simultaneously. So, you know what I mean? And then these attacks would be obscure. You wouldn't necessarily know that you were under attack. So it's not like a meeting, it's a covert enemy, The 12th house has a lot to do with the Black Lodge as a hidden enemy. They rarely are standing out where they can be seen.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that's their power, and that's the power of the Black Lodge. In any human being, the enemy can't be seen, and that's the power of psychology, to make the unseen enemy seen. So you can be like Hercules and use Mercury and the power of dissipating illusion or dispelling illusion, Buddhic reception to dispel this phantom. So if you look at the dweller, then intuitive connection via Mercury is very important for the overcoming of the dweller. You have to really be able to see through it. It's not just Mars and Pluto.
Isn't that what the fourth C group is doing today?
The second C group.
Well, who works with the culture?
The 10th C group. And
those educators.
Well, okay, educators. Okay.
Who are penetrating culture so that we can see clearly what's going on.
All of them help.
Yeah.
All of them help. And from this point of view, you're right on that the use of the Antikarana is the method of the fourth C group.
Yeah.
And it's particularly the ajna, the throat, and the head. The heart, for some reason, it's not involved in that particular education C group, which is rather interesting when you look at how education is proceeding in our society. Except under special circumstances, it's not so much a heart experience, is it? It's throat, ajna, and head. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But in our new forms of education, we must include the heart, right? Okay, so anyway, we are working on the first ray. In the comprehension of these two methods of aggressive, he's choosing interesting words. In the comprehension of these two methods of aggressive work, that of the aspirant and that of the initiate, and how would we distinguish them? Will come much of vital interest to the careful student of analogy. Anyway, the initiate is far more effective, is he not? The initiate really knows what he's doing.
Brings down forces from higher levels.
And what did he say the aspirant does?
He stops building the thought form. He stops creative bungling.
Well, okay, that's good. No, that's good. That's good. I like that. Okay, I like that.
Speaks the new stream, yeah.
Okay, so the aspirant at least stops eating. Whoops, how did it? At least stops eating the old stream and does not contribute to creative bungling. Okay. Bunging. Okay, bungling. The aspirant. Okay. Here lies the clue to the present problem of evil and to the vitality of the hold which the matter aspect has on the spiritual. It's pretty intense. The vitality of the hold. We have to train ourselves, however we want to think about it, to become a conscious assailant. And we have to learn to work aggressively, which means, I suppose, with full intent and persistently, and not standing aside, holding our ground. It's very important in these days that we become this. Needless to say, as old as we may be, we are involved in an all-out effort at this point. This is it. These are the latter days of the coming of the latter days of the forerunner. And if we don't give an all-out effort, it has to be wise, can't be crazy, but if we don't give an all-out effort at this point, then we just will have not done everything we can to bring the Christ in as fully and as acceptedly as he can be. So, it's a choice of everyone, and DK presents many of his students with that choice. You can go along, or you can really drive forward. And remember what he said, even if you're in bed, you can work just as powerfully as many of those who are out there, with apparently full vitality.
Yeah, in fact, he made a comment to one of the disciples, breaking that illusion, saying that you are actually in bed working greater service than getting out there physically, because you are taking the full blunt force of these higher energies coming through and channeling them through your system. And this person was, under the illusion of glamour that they weren't doing anything because they were bedridden.
With all the self-pity involved and the feeling of ineffectiveness and all the rest of it, we can be very effective in every moment.
That's what Francis Moore used to say about meditation now. It was a subjective center more than, all the teaching and stuff like that. That was her take on things.
Well, I tend to agree with her more and more. I didn't at the time. I was an activist, but, you can be an internal activist also. And maybe sometimes work, the whole hierarchy are internal activists from our perspective.
David Spanner talks a lot about subtle activism.
Who talks about that?
David Spanner.
Thank you. Sure. As you get older, you tend to talk about these things. out of necessity, perhaps, but I do believe there is an ingathering of power. We should be able to work. Okay, so the vitality of the hold, which the matter aspect has on spiritual, and to the extent that we can help ourselves rid ourselves of this vital grip. It's a reverse grip. We need to be gripped by the neck or the top of the head by Vulcan and the soul, and not have that reverse grip dragging us down. And if we can help free other people from this very down-dragging grip, and if we can explain to them what's really happening, so they don't think it's just them being bad, but they know that from other places, forces which are working against their progress have arisen, perhaps we can mobilize them. I mean, that would be really good if we could mobilize them. And ourselves first. If we're not mobilized, no sense going around talking to other people about being mobilized, because we just will not have lived the example. Facha. Is Facha mobilized? She seems to be ready for something here. Okay. This gigantic thought form, the product of man's ignorance and selfishness, is kept alive and vitalized in 3 ways. So if you want to feed a dweller, here's the advice. Tui and I have a new picture of Master DK. It's not new, but you've seen it around, but we're going to bring it out of the car. Where is it? Can you bring Master DK in? Tui is going to be bringing Master DK in.
Yeah.
We welcome him too.
Yeah, and we welcome him too. Yes, also. He'll be interested in the author. First, by the aggregate of the evil desires, wicked intentions, and selfish purposes of each individual man. This is how the dweller is kept alive. Every wrong thought, and this is interesting, when embodied in speech or manifested in action on the physical plane, goes to swell the proportions of this evil entity. So why are wrong thoughts, per se, not going to swell the proportions of this evil entity? Wrong thoughts, per se, if not spoken or enacted.
So does it mean that it's much better, even if we have wrong thoughts, not to name them, not to
speak them as if, to direct them towards manifestation. Not to speak them out, and not to do them. Not to speak, not to do. Because, it's all one mental field, isn't it? So you never know who's going to walk in your front door, your back door, your open window, or whatever. Of course, if you had nothing of your own nature in that, they wouldn't walk in the door or window. But we do. And the question is, what do we do about this unwanted guest? We can entertain this guest. Where did you put it, dear? No, I'm a little worried about the glass.
Oh no, I'm just telling you that it's different.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's it. You got it. Where did you get it? Where did you get it?
Oh, this through Philip Lindsay, and then...
Well, that's Philip.
Yeah.
And Philip is telling us he doesn't want it spread around. We got it through Philip Lindsay too. But if he gives it to enough people, he won't have to spread it around.
He was studying and working here for a month or so, and he had that behind him.
Yeah. This is the Philip Lindsay rendering. Apparently there are 5 pictures of Master DK, all drawn by the same woman artist from North Carolina. And so you find a place to put it without breaking it. What?
Is this her latest and greatest?
No. That was 70 years ago. She did them all. At that time. Some are very animated, with eyes that are quite open, and this one's much more reserved. This is his first grade picture.
Oh, that is nice. Put that behind.
Yeah, so now...
So someone has colored this one?
Apparently this woman did 5 paintings. Showing different aspects of the Master DK. And supposedly, occult hearsay, Master DK was said to have commented that it's a fair likeness. It's a pretty good likeness. Yeah. So, I'm glad he's facing you. All right. But anyway, you cannot tell who's going to come in your front door or your back door. if you sit there and say, hey, be welcome, be my guest, take the best chair, let me serve you, let me feed you, with a bad thought, that's a whole different thing from saying, ouch, rascal. So we all know we get bad thoughts. So maybe some people here don't get bad thoughts. But if anybody gets a bad thought or a less than desirable living room thought, then out you go. So he says, bar fast the gates of thought, sentinel desire. Cast out all fear, all hate, all greed. Look out and up. Cast out, sentinel desire.
So writing them will be different. Writing them will be different than speaking them.
Well, it depends on, if you are detached and you say, this is the thought which occurred.
Yeah,
and here you are, your consciousness is not invested in it. You're casting a beam of light upon it, you're deglamorizing it and all that. That's different from giving your emotional body over to it. And then acting on it. Not against it, but for it, on its behalf. We could sit down and we could say, we could do that too. That's another type of invocation. What are the 10 worst thoughts I've ever had? You'd come up with stuff, I know it. And it wouldn't be pleasant, but, if we're ever going to do a thorough cleansing of the psyche, what does DK talk about? The coming into the light. He says there's an initiation called the coming forward into the light, or something like that. And you get the idea that anything you've ever been or done is scoured at that time. And it's there for everybody to see. Bringing forward into the light. Some initiation, he says, very high initiation. And he says you have to get used to the group gaze in order to be able to go through later that initiation of the bringing forward into the light. So it says, get used to being seen for what you are. Each sees and knows the villainy of each, and yet there is with that great revelation no turning back, no spurning of each other, no shakiness upon the road goes forward into day. So
I think I've lost something in the conversation. Is this something that we do at some point in our evolution, or at one of the initiations?
One of the high initiations, the bringing forward of everything into the light. But the gradual bringing forward into the light is something we do all along.
Okay. But at one time, it's all brought forward.
It's everything.
Okay.
The road is trodden in the light of day, and that naught can be hidden.
Okay.
And that's at the fourth initiation, or?
I think it's later, even. My impression is that it's a whole, I don't know, but maybe everything on the whole monadic journey is revealed. He doesn't say. He's not specifying it. Okay, so anyway, it's speech and action that are the main thing that swell the dweller. Second, now this is out of our control, by the fostering care of the brothers of the shadow. And I oftentimes think, what is the shadow? I say the shadow is that's the personality. It's the brothers of the personality. The shadow is that of the monad. The soul is its reflection. The personality is its shadow. These are the brothers of the lower 18 subplanes where the shadow occurs. And those representatives of what might be called cosmic evil, who under the karma of the fourth or human family in this fourth round assume stupendous responsibilities. Very interesting how he basically says what they've done to themselves, because they've assumed stupendous responsibilities for undoing what they have done. By the way, the number 4 is very interesting, because if you look at the 3 members of the Axis powers, they all had a prominent fourth ray. Germany, fourth ray soul. Japan, fourth ray soul. Italy, fourth ray personality. So there's something here about, having the power to go either way and making the wrong decision that is involved with the brothers of the shadow. Let's just say, humanity is harmony through conflict. The lower part of the ray is conflict, the higher part of the ray is harmony. And you can live on either side of that ray. So, these representatives, Black Lodge, cosmic evil, come from cosmic sources. He's going to explain that to us. Make possible the secondary vitalization of the thought form and produce conditions of such dire description that under the law of rapid that under law, rapid crystallization supervenes and ultimate destruction becomes possible. So basically what he's saying is, the Black Lodge is part of the plan of the Solar Logos, but not part of the plan of the planetary Logos. The planetary Logos did not intend this kind of action. The Solar Logos has found a way to use it. And basically, what the Solar Logos does, Solar Logos, what has happened there, uses the Black Lodge to crystallize evil. Because, we've got lots of evil anyway, it's just planetary evil. It's just going to be there because of ignorance. The Black Lodge comes along meaning to be very obstructive, very preventive, and their efforts even take out planetary evil with them. Because as they crystallize, they pull in all this planetary evil, which also gets dissipated faster than it would. Like, after all, what are we doing now? Maybe in a way ahead of the game of where we would be, because the Second World War, and even First, was not expected to be so drastic. But because it was so drastic, the broom swept a lot of stuff clean. And that's all because of the Black Lodge. Solar Logos has used them. How? Well,
So, but what you're saying, the Solar Logos, I really want to see that I understand it. The Solar Logos has been using this Black Lodge capacity to crystallize the darkness and to take it, to put it out of the planet. But why are you saying that the planet is not...
The planet doesn't have the scope. Planetary Logos doesn't have the scope to integrate the efforts of the Black Lodge. The Solar Logos has that kind of scope and can somehow manipulate them so they serve a purpose. He'll tell us about that in a little bit.
So it's more like the planet, is kind of suffering, or...
Yes, the planet suffers under the Black Lodge.
But the Solar Logos is...
And the Solar Logos is on top of it. So from the larger point of view, we all benefit from that. And because after all, Sirius has done this job. There's no what we call Black Lodge within the system of Sirius. It's achieved, I think, the third in a sequence of 7 initiations, and that is a one that banishes evil. Our planetary Logos is still working on the second. I think Sirius has already achieved, in his scheme. Our Solar Logos has taken only a second, not the third. I think Sirius has taken the third. In a sequence of 9. 9 solar initiations, 7 planetary initiations. These are the minor ones. Okay. Students would be well to broaden their concept as to the purpose of evil and the place the evil forces play in the general scheme. Well, we could just say it's the factor of resistance. Now, in your own nature and in your environment, you often strengthen yourself by going against resistance. So Master Moria says what? His famous thing? His many famous things. Okay. Right. Okay, so how do we strengthen the Dweller? Well, so far we feed it with negative thought, and then the Black Lodge feeds it, and then what about it? The energy still extant, and the vibration still to be felt, which is the persistence of force from an earlier solar system. We don't know. Could be the last one, or it could be a number of them. There were a number of foregoing solar systems. Okay. And an emanation from that which is no longer considered in this solar system to be a principle. So the lower mental plane, astral plane, etc. So in other words, these are still strong and still feed those masters who grew up with them. The Black Masters grew up in the first solar system, previous solar system, and they like that energy, and it strengthens what they do.
Is that the moon now, or?
Well, the cosmic moon. The cosmic moon. Yeah. There is an old solar system in our vicinity. It's probably the rejected body of our previous solar Logos, although, there's been some speculation. Nicholas has been speculating, and some others. Mars was once a sun, we're told. Mars, our unsacred planet now, Blavatsky apparently says that it was once a sun. So it's fallen in status, and it's possible that Mars was the Logos of such. I don't entirely buy it, but I still want to understand that more before I just say that Mars, who is now a non-sacred planet, was one day the center of our solar system. And what happened to Sol? But Blavatsky says something of this nature, that Mars was the sun.
You have something up there, you have still field.
Those
masters.
Those masters who grew up. Yeah, initiates of the previous solar system. So obviously, let's just say, the dweller is being fed. And I guess we have to ask ourselves how we just really avoid adding anything to it. I think one has to be very vigilant. Probably at our stage of evolution, we add a lot less to it than many, but if we add anything to it, we're a bit stronger than, mentally than others are. And, feeding the dweller in the area of separativeness, pride, and cruelty, disciples of this type could do that without really knowing what they're doing. They just think they're standing up for the teaching or something.
Separativeness, cruelty, and
hatred.
Pride,
cruelty, and
pride, separativeness, and cruelty. Pride, separativeness, and cruelty. PSA, the gas company. These three factors are the main ones to be considered by the great ones in their work of enabling men to break loose from the influence of this, so important, right? We've done it to ourselves, right? This self-imposed form. To destroy that which they have themselves constructed and to shake themselves free of the illusion cast by the persistent vampire which they have nourished and strengthened for millennia of years. He is speaking in the strongest language. This is not the language of political correctness. This is not the language of even the enlightened person of today viewing the world situation. They have no idea where all this came from, or how intractable it is, or the vehemence of the hidden enemies. They have no idea about this. How much of this we should even send out into the public, I don't even know, but might not be helpful in all cases. Uranus is the planet we need in many ways. When the word shake is used, in this spelling of it, then Uranus is the planet of the earthquakes, the planet of the archetype. Shake it loose and impose a new pattern. That's Uranus. So they do, when they come into your life. He says if a disciple comes into the life of an aspirant, initiate and disciple, a master in the life of initiate, shaking goes on. You are disturbed. The roots are shaken. They are in the soil of the past. I'm sure, he just has come into the room, but okay, if one of the great ones came in, I'm sure it would be a shaking experience. I mean, I don't know, just say, I'm so happy you come, sweet Master X. But anyway, and then I guess we have to be willing to be shaken to our roots. Isn't that what they say? I was shaken to my roots. We need that, really. Hence the coming earthquakes that we can expect when the earth changes. I mean, we really all need to be shaken up. When he tells about what's ahead of America, you almost think we may be driven to help each other. I just was.
And that did happen with earthquakes. Anytime there's an earthquake, there's so much helping.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
How people come together in the face of adversity. And this is the fourth great path. On our planet, the path of pain.
Give us a thumbnail sketch of what he said will happen to America, because I totally...
Well, I wish I could tell you precisely, but we always see the handwriting on the wall. He says, fortunately for the soul of that great people, much suffering lies ahead. Yeah. Economic, disease, potentially. We could have also explosions, that kind of thing. We could have social revolution. We could have attacks. He warned the disciples, watch out for attacks in your own home, he said. Some will be even attacked in their home, he said. He didn't say that about America per se. So, we're going through a big change. And let's just say that the planetary dweller is not yet thoroughly released or seen. I think, I don't want to be negative, but what he says is he talks about the war that could come and how bad it could be, and Shambhala would be involved, and the Department of Religion will be involved, and the hatred will be like nothing seen before. Okay.
Where is Pluto in
Well, we're already going through some of that right now.
Yeah, but Pluto is not yet opposing the July 4th sun of the United States.
Where was Pluto when your country was born? Where was Pluto then?
Pretty much where it is now.
House.
I don't know. We have to get out that.
Because I know that then Pluto was in Capricorn then.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
The next time when the United States was established, so this is the next time when Pluto went to Capricorn from that earlier time.
Well, let's just take a look. There are different versions of the United States.
Because that would maybe bring in when we see the same position.
Now, why are there so many versions? Haven't you astrologers rectified?
You people.
You smart astrologers.
So that is there. It is in Aquarius.
So the return of Pluto to its original position is occurring around 2020 or 2021, 2022.
It's on my sun.
Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. It is a realization. Well, it's on Helena's sun too.
Yeah.
And other sons who are what?
27 degrees. 27 from it. Sorry to say.
So we're going to have to get to the
what's the expected outcome of that?
Whole lot of shaking going on.
Look. So it's Mercury opposing Mercury, and so because that moment. When Pluto goes to that 27 degrees, then you can estimate something.
Okay, here's 2015, the year in which Pluto is opposed. The sun of the United States is the same year that Pluto is opposed Sirius.
That's right.
So that's the White Lodge and the Black Lodge.
So the 15 until 22 are very, very crucial years for United States.
And the United States began going through its Piscean period, progressed sun.
Oh, it did?
In 2005. 2005.
So Neptune will go over the sun.
2004, 2008. But the 7 times 9 was 2005. That was the New World Servers and the 9-year cycle.
What is by the Piscean period?
Oh, see, take a look here.
Put some words around it.
Karma. Endings. The results of what you've done, having to heal what you've done. The healing could come if you think about it. I'm sure that my impression is that this is the country in which the Christ reappears. Therefore, this is the country in which the Black Lodge attacks the harvest.
And what makes you think that it is the country where the Christ is here?
Well, first of all, it's for the world, but I look at the presence of the United Nations here. I look at the second ray Aquarian soul of this country. And I look at the Christ being in all the Aquarian energies and being a monad and soul on the second ray. So I think that's what this country was designed for. That's my impression. Now, of course, he's a world, and they say, let's wait and see, and what country does the best and the most and all that. But I think we will see the worst here because the best is going to be anchored here.
So tell me when Neptune goes over the sun.
When Neptune goes over the progressed sun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it 0 degree still next year?
Hold it. Hold on. Give me a break here. Closing in. Oh, that's it. 2020. Whoa. 2018, 2020. 2020.
Those years are really
very, very strong years. Pluto return. Pluto returns. Yeah. Well, look.
No, this is Neptune.
Neptune and Pluto at the same time.
That's right.
Neptune and Pluto at the same time. So here's our question, how trained are we? How strong are we? How fortified are we? How ready are we? Because we have a choice here. And whether we're in the body or out of the body, we're going to be involved in it, This is the battle on the astral plane during World War II was even worse than on the physical plane. So, we're in training now.
Where are the Pluto then in relationship to Israel and Iran?
Well, I think Israel's having some kind of Saturn return, at this time. 60th year. There's a very strong Pluto. Very strong Pluto. Okay.
Let's just make the assumption that this will be the country. Through what people, but what arena?
Well, obviously, the Christ is so big that we don't know. Does he come in politics? Does he come? We don't know how he comes. No, and we don't know that he comes in 2025 either. We don't know that. Only the first stages for the preparation of the externalization of the hierarchy will be accomplished in 2025 or thereabouts. The plans will be laid for the very first stages, only the first stages. So it could still be a number of decades before the Christ actually emerges, but we're told that the disappearance of the Piscean energy will occur in the 21st century. That's the end of it. And the sixth ray is out by 2130 or thereabouts. So we just have to live through this next 100 years in good spiritual shape, well fortified, and somehow protecting everyone we can and somehow getting the best out of everyone we can. This is our job. And somehow enduring the hardships that may come to us.
And waking people up.
Yes, that's part of the shaking too. That's part of the Uranus. Every one of us should be playing the role of Uranus to the people we encounter, with a little support of Jupiter and Venus to make sure that they stay intact.
You brought up the term that I've been pondering for a while. Given all that's going on and all of the levels that we have to consider dealing with, it seems like some form of protection would be a good idea.
Yeah, protection. And because they do protect us to a degree.
They do protect us, and yet I think we also need to do some other things on our own. To design this idea of protection, because I know just from my own work, people walk around basically with their astral energy fields wide open to any old thing that can come in.
Sure.
And you can set your intention not to have these negative things come in and impact you.
Well, we have talked about the sevenfold wheel of divine love.
Yes.
Which is a good one.
Yes.
And I suppose the masters will always protect your consciousness. And I didn't even know what that meant until I kind of experienced understandingly what it could mean to have a disintegrating consciousness. It's much more important than protecting your physical or emotional nature, although they might do that too. And they say those who are particularly involved to assist with the reappearance of the Christ are singled out for protection. Okay. They are marked out if you're working for the reappearance of the Christ. I guess what that means is really karmic deferral. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean they cannot lift your karma, but they can stave off that which would render you less effective at this crucial time. So anyway, we have seen how the dweller is fed. We've seen that we've done it, that we have to shake ourselves free from it. When you have a nice Uranus experience, it can shake you free from certain aspects of the dweller which may have had more of a hold over you than they should. So, when you're undergoing dire Uranian things, just think of the freedom, the connection with the law of freedom. Remember that from Sirius come maybe 4 planets that are involved. There is the unknown planet, accepting the Syrian revolution. It could be ISIS. And then there is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, all of them, bringing the Syrian energy to this earth, and you can be sure that the law of freedom is connected with Uranus, and the law of karma with Saturn, and what made up, and the star of sensitivity, Neptune. So its initiatory sensitivity is coming via Neptune, and the other two have their role. So we will become more inwardly free, although perhaps more outwardly bound. That's the story. I'm just looking at Lynn. I'm trying to receive the telepathic impression as to whether
it is
that the food has
one part of it is because we get so much.
You want a verbal?
Wait a second. Sorry to be so slow. You know? Yeah. What the heck? A verbal
is here.
Ah, just as I thought. Okay, we'll go on a little later, and we'll see how we can participate with the great ones in helping to destroy. This is what do they say about the army? That I heard George Shultz. Did you hear his talk the other night about the? Is he 90? Is he 94? George Shultz. So wait a second. Before you go away, we got to know how old George Shultz is. Okay. This is a boy. He's really a Taurus-looking kind of guy. I don't know if he's Taurus, but he's got Taurus something. Whoa! Come on now, give me this, will you? I know that I may be the only one who's burning to know how old George Shultz is. But,
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
George Shultz, Wikipedia, come on. Wikipedia. George Shultz, Wikipedia. December 13th, 1920. So he's pushing 90. He's 89.
So he's great. Well,
yeah, but I'll tell you what, it's not only sad, there's something more there. Well, maybe we'll try to find his horoscope. George Shultz horoscope. I know you want to eat, but if he's Taurus... Romania, Lucille Ball, Wikipedia. Is there no George Shultz? He was a million years ago. He has that kind of... He was very interesting, and now I forgot why I thought he was interesting.
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, God, he's a devotee. A total devotee of Ronald Reagan. Of course, that would fit with Sag, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That whole devotee thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but why not devoted to something everything?
Well, he ends his whole talk by saying, when I hear the words Mr. President, there's only one Mr. President for me, Ronald Reagan. And those were the last words of his talk. Yeah. I was thought it was a little bit insulting to Obama, who I think was in attendance.
Yeah.
I'll go for lunch.
Yeah. Have you had enough, George? We have not established that he's a Taurus. Okay, I'll work on his Taurian nature. You go to lunch. Remember, what is the keynote of Sagittarius? Let food be sought. So there was a statement.